Good morning. This is really, really exciting, isn't it? It's absolutely exciting. Let me tell you what happens when you are excited. Last Tuesday morning, I was on the 6 o'clock ferry from Magnetic Island in the morning, and the ferry trip was a great trip, and I got off the ferry and I quickly headed towards the taxi rank, and I put my bag in the taxi, and I got distracted by somebody who was there. We had a chat for a couple of minutes, and then I got into the taxi, and the taxi driver looked at me and he said, is there any particular reason why you want to go with me? And I said, well, I need to go to the airport. And he said, well, you put your luggage in the taxi in front of me. So, so you can get distracted when you're excited. Just like to start off by sharing a story in regards to a delightful young woman that I had the opportunity to know over a number of years, called Cassie Stainton in Townsville. Cassie's a young woman. She attended a school in Townsville, St Pat's, and Cassie was of the school. She wasn't just in the school. She was much loved by her fellow students and the staff. But at the end of her school life, Cassie was somewhat lost in regards to her community participation and, in particular, the relationships that come with that. So the organisation that I was managing, called Inclusion Works, was invited to come into Cassie's life and actually assist her in connecting with community. So Cassie's a vibrant woman who has incredible desire to be of community and to seek out community. So we set ourselves a task. We said, well, Cassie, perhaps why don't we identify 10 people that have had a significant impact in your life, and let's go visiting them. Because we need to discover in some ways what they know about you and what you know about them. So off we went, visiting a number of people in her life. We visited St Pat's, and we visited some of the teachers who were part of Cassie's life, and we noticed that Cassie actually came alive in the sense of when she met her ex-drama teacher. And her ex-drama teacher actually spoke with absolute passion in regards to Cassie's involvement in the school play, where once again the school made a condition that you're going to be of this play, not a prop within the play. So it didn't take very long for us to discover Cassie's re-establishment in some ways and her passion for drama. So we went looking not just for any drama opportunity in Townsville, but the best drama opportunity in Townsville. And we came across a drama company called Aluna Youth Theatre, and we went and had discussions with them. It's interesting in the sense of the demands that this particular opportunity was going to be placed on Cassie. Cassie had a significant health challenge, and we needed to be aware of that, as did the drama company. She attended once a week, participated in all the drama exercises. She participated in 5 different performances, and she directed one particular performance. I attended actually one of the sessions that she was directing in regards to the other members of that particular play. The play was around the issue of the celebration of diversity. And Cassie communicates by way of her eyes, and it's amazing how she convey an element of frustration, and you had better lift your game by how she communicated with the other performers. She had a strong support. You'll see on this picture, a picture of James, who didn't just become a close friend of Cassie, but a connector of other people with Cassie. And he spent much time in her life, even when she had left the company a few years later. One of the things that actually significantly showed the commitment that this drama theatre had in regards to Cassie's involvement was there was a new director who arrived, and the new director had come from France, and he was very determined to introduce changes. So during one of the meetings, the members of the theatre company are there, and he announced that they were going to do a performance in one of the local quarries at Townsville. Didn't take very long for James to step forward and say, I have a problem with that because the quarry is not accessible. And if the quarry is not accessible, it means that Cassie's not involved. If Cassie's not involved, I'm not involved. And at that moment, all the other members of the theatre company stood up and stood beside James and said, and we're not involved also. So the director got a very clear message that Cassie's involvement was to be a serious involvement of being of the community, not excluded from that community. So when we think of that, what is the key message that Cassie's experience taught us? And that is that we need to seriously invest time with others in discovering the more in people and the more in their community. So I know that you're probably thinking that, well, how do we actually do this? Well, I suppose one of the ways in which we can approach this is by actually breaking up the title of this presentation into two components. And that is, let's start off with you are more than what you think you are. I've got my tool bag here too in some ways because this morning's session is going to be introducing you to a number of tools that you can take away with you today. And now it's all about you. When you sat down, you would have noticed that there was a yellow sheet with Tool 1 on it. We're now going to look at Tool 1. Tool 1, the Individual Capacity Inventory. Now, the Individual Capacity Inventory invites us to look at three aspects of our lives. Now, for those of you who have pens with you, what I'd like you to do is to draw a line down the middle of the page. Draw a line down the middle of the page, from the top to the bottom. And on the left-hand side of the page, if you'd like to write me, and on the right-hand side of the page, on the other side of the line, if you'd like to write the name of the person known to you who might have lived experience of disability. But I want to start with you. And I want you to consider this as an exercise that you can do for homework tonight. I do have your phone numbers, so I'll ring you at 9 o'clock to make sure that you've done it. I'm going to work through this, and I want you to just very quickly get a sense of what this exercise is asking of us. So the first heading within this capacity inventory is the issue of gifts of the head. So when we think of the gifts of the head, what are the things that you know something about and would enjoy talking about with others? So I just want you to spend a few seconds just thinking of that. This is about you, by the way. So what are some of the things that you know something about and would enjoy talking about with others? By the way, you don't get a high score by the number of points you put down, but just for the purpose of this exercise, just identify something that perhaps you're known for knowing something about. And may welcome the opportunity of sharing that with others and learning from others because of that sharing. Let's move on to the second one, gifts of the heart. So when we talk about the gifts of the heart, we're talking about the passions that are part of us, that are part of our identity. So what are the things that you care about deeply that others may also care about, and through that common interest have a capacity to connect? So what are the gifts of your heart? It could be the environment, it could be civic life, it could be your children, etc. And the third and final one is looking at gifts of the hand. You know, what are some of the things or skills that you know how to do and would like to share with others? What are some of the practical skills that you like doing that you could share with others? And perhaps that practical skill may be one that you may be able to receive some sort of income from. If I can perhaps just share an experience that I had with this particular one. I was mowing the nature strip in our street when I was living in Melbourne, and my wife pulled up in the old Volvo and wound down the window, and she looked at me very sternly and she said, "Get home now." So I quickly turned the mower around and walked home, and she said, "How many times do I have to tell you, why do you have to mow the whole street? Why don't you just mow our nature strip?" So in some ways, that was something that I could do, that was gave me a quick sense of satisfaction, but there's probably conditions under that that need to be placed. So when we think of the gifts of our head, heart and hand, we start to identify the capacity of our connecting abilities. I suppose I'd like to also invite you to take this form home tonight and start considering the gifts of the head, heart and hand of other people in your life. In fact, I had a phone call from a mother in a group that I've been working with, and she rang me the next day and she was crying. And I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "Oh, Rick, I did that head, heart and hand exercise during dinner last night, and I thought I knew what my kids thought of me, but they told me things I never knew." So this is an introduction to discovery. So tool one is about how do we actually identify people's gifts of the head, heart and hand. So we might put tool one in the tool bag. Let's move on. There might be 10 other ways in which we can call upon to help identify an individual's gifts, talents and contributions. So tool one is only one particular tool that can assist you to identify the individual's gifts, talents and contributions. Now I'm now going to introduce tool two, because tool two actually involves us to become aware of the concept of the power of 10. Some of you may be aware of that, but if I could just briefly introduce you to it. The power of 10 is a deliberate process of using the concept of the multiple of 10 to take us beyond the boundaries of our traditional thinking. And you'll see from the diagram you have a box with arrows within that box, and it identifies that as an example of traditional thinking. But in the next box we have arrows going beyond the box, and what we're saying there is perhaps we need to go beyond the boundaries of our traditional thinking into the new world. I'm not a neurologist, but one of the things I do know is that our brain is an incredibly complex item, that our brain takes in lots and lots, thousands and thousands of pieces of communication all the time. But our brain also has the capacity to manage that. And one of the ways in which it does that is that it actually takes chunks of information, and when it receives a certain number of chunks, it actually stops to give you the capacity to absorb and identify and deal with the information that you have received. An example of that was when I was young, my mum taught me the landline phone number, and I was pretty competent with that, and I knew if I had to share with others my home phone number, I could do that. But I actually did struggle a bit when I was given my mobile number, because what happens once again, those chunks normally go in about 6 or 7 chunks of information. But a mobile number, of course, is beyond 7. So it actually forces you to go into that next world of thinking. So we can use the power of 10 in a number of different ways. Staff don't like me because when they come to see me with a great idea, I invite them to go away and get another 9 and then come back and talk to me. So tool 2 is an important tool in actually expanding our thinking. Let's move now beyond the individual to that of community. So now we're going to look at the concept of, and your community is more than what you think it is. As John mentioned, in 1985, John Armstrong introduced me to John McKnight, and John McKnight introduced me to a concept called asset-based community development. And I just want to briefly share with you some of those key principles. This particular slide identifies some of the assets that John McKnight identifies as being critical to a healthy community. I'll just actually go through these quickly. The first one is the people within the community. The second one is the formal systems. That refers to governments and the formal systems that exist within community. The third one refers to associations, clubs and organisations that may exist in community. The fourth one relates to the concept of physical space and how that contributes to rich and strong communities. The fifth one is that of local economy, the world of business, and the final one is the contribution that stories make that actually share our celebration of community. Now, John McKnight actually takes this particular concept into a diagram of 6 squares, where once again he identifies the areas of the 6 key assets of community. And you'll find that on the other side of the yellow page you have before you a quick example of that audit tool. Now, we won't have time to do this as an exercise, but if I can just briefly work through them and give you an example, and also integrate the tool of the power of 10 within this exercise. So let's start off with associations. You know, in regards to your interest, for example, of the interest of your head in regards to knowledge, you might ask yourself, well, what are 10 different associations within your community that may relate to the gifts of your head? What are the opportunities there that relate to that single thing that you identified as one of your key knowledge components? Let's go to physical space. What are the 10 aspects of physical space in community that can provide helpful and meaningful community inclusion opportunities? I walk my dog twice a day. Same time in the morning, same time at night, along Picnic Bay Beach. Not surprisingly, I come across other people who walk their dog same time, same place. Consequently, of course, there's interaction, and I actually got to know the dogs' names before the individuals' names, but the issue of being present in physical space can contribute to community connecting. The issue of formal systems, such as government, can provide inclusion opportunities, and there's a fascinating story, which we don't have time today, of a Canadian police station who had a wonderful experience in including a young man with disability within that particular organisation. We have individuals also as another group, and an interesting question that I'd like to leave with you is that when you think of individuals, who are the movers and shakers within your community? Who are the movers and shakers? Some of you, have any of you heard of a guy called Jonathan Thurston? Hands up if you know or heard of Jonathan Thurston. Yeah, he's not a bad footy player. And well, you know, it's incredible the amount of knowledge that Jonathan Thurston has in regards to the people within Townsville. So if I'm looking for a particular area of support and assistance within the community, I can quite often go to Jonathan Thurston and say, do you know a person who knows something about this or does this? And Jonathan Thurston just doesn't know the people, but he can also do the asking if required. We also need to look at the capacity of the local community the local economy to assist us in community inclusion opportunities. And once again, we might call upon the assistance of the Chamber of Commerce, etc. And finally, the gathering of stories. As you're aware, stories, as you've heard already, are wonderful stories in regards to the truth of people's lives and how that can shift us in our attitudes and our commitment to community inclusion. So the community audit tool actually enables us to develop and go beyond our traditional thinking of community. Let's move on to tool 4 now. This is the definition of community that's actually offered by John McKnight, and if I can just sort of read this and take my time in doing that. John McKnight defines community as follows. Community can be defined as the social place, and with his permission, the wording within the bracket I've included, sense of human connectedness, experienced by family, friends, neighbours, neighbourhood associations, schools, clubs, civic groups, local enterprises, churches, ethnic organisations, temples, local unions, local government and local media. Community can be defined as the social place, the sense of human connectedness. So this definition is actually about relationships. It's about connecting and belonging and being part of their community. But what this also does, it invites us to go beyond the boundaries of our traditional thinking of what community is. So in my early days of pursuit of community inclusion opportunities, there are many of these areas that I may not have considered. In the early days, I would not have considered local business as being an opportunity for community inclusion. It also invites us to consider challenging ourselves in regards to the comfort zone that we may have within community to expand into other areas. Some of the challenges that we've had with staff is where staff have been invited by participants that we may be working alongside to experience membership into a local church or faith community. Some staff may find that incredibly difficult and may need to work through how they can best do that. It challenges the perceptions of what we feel comfortable to do and what we may need to do. And finally, we obviously discover the more that exists within community. Now, I've been sent by the Mayor of Townsville to do a bit of a promotion. Hands up those of you who have been to Townsville. Oh, why'd you leave then? So, okay. The Mayor invites you back, and it's a wonderful city. I've lived in Townsville since 1991, and I suppose in that time I've identified a number of community inclusion opportunities that we could work with and develop further. Now, I suppose when we think of the community inclusion opportunities, we think, well, how many opportunities may there exist in Townsville? So perhaps I'll share with you some of the numbers that people have shared with me. Somebody said 10. There are 10 opportunities in Townsville. Perhaps there's more than 10. Somebody said to me 200 opportunities. Rick, you know, there has to be at least 200 opportunities in Townsville. Somebody was very courageous and said 400 opportunities in Townsville. There are in fact nearly 3 million community opportunities in Townsville. 3 million community inclusion opportunities in Townsville. So how did we get 3 million potential community inclusion opportunities in Townsville? And this is what we did. We went back to John McKnight's definition of community, as you may recall, the churches, the schools, the local businesses, and with assistance from data and from the local community information centre, we actually identified what numbers there were in the community. And then, not surprisingly, we multiplied that by 10. Because that makes sense, doesn't it? If there's a cricket club, if there's one cricket club, there would be 10 inclusion opportunities within that cricket club. Not just one, but 10. In fact, there's probably more than 10. Or if you look at a school, there's going to be dozens of community inclusion opportunities with that environment. So once again, we can use a definition as a checklist in some ways, and we can overlay the power of 10 as part of that. 3 million community inclusion opportunities. Let me now invite you to share with you a story in regards to Ian. Ian's a young man who had a severe stroke But over many months, he improved in regards to his speech and his movement. But during that period of time, he lost many friends, and he lost strongly the sense and value of community participation. But despite that, he never, ever lost his passion for gardening. So in our work with Ian, we thought, well, how can we actually increase Ian's understanding of the capacity of gardening to offer a lot of community inclusion opportunities? So not surprisingly, can you look at your yellow sheet again and remember that community audit tool? What we did was we placed that community audit tool over Ian's passion for gardening. Hopefully, this is a great example of how we can extend our thinking beyond our traditional understanding of community inclusion opportunities. So here are some of the examples. When we think of the asset of people, we can ask ourselves, what are the people opportunities in the area of gardening? So we've got neighbours who share ideas, who share cuttings and produce, or offer support to maintain other gardens whilst people may be away, to share, to swap tools, and to help establish a community tool bank. We might investigate as to who are the knowers of knowers in gardening and horticulture. On Magnetic Island, there's a monthly swap and share cuttings where the community come together and share that particular knowledge and interest. There may be a number of other opportunities under the heading of associations. Remember, that's one of McKnight's assets. So there might be a gardening club, there might be a men's shed that may have a gardening group within it. There's the University of the Third Age, which has a gardening club, and there's a vegetarian collective within the community. In regards to the local economy, the business, we have opportunities like nurseries, markets, hardware stores, travel tours to the West Australia wildflowers, and LifeTech, which is a particular organisation that deals in modified tools and equipment. And then finally, we have the area of physical space, and not surprisingly, there are some options there. Community gardens to adopt a park or adopt a garden, and open day garden visits. So you can see how using this one simple tool of community audits, we can start building on the diversity of opportunities around this single aspect of gardening. In going through this process, Ian identified very clearly that one of the interests and passions that he could have was that of the local community garden. And in our discussions with Ian, he said, well, a community garden would be really important to him for a number of reasons. The firstly is that it would be a community of people who share the same interest of gardening. The other issue was that he would be able to contribute in so many ways within that gardening situation, that community garden situation. Are any of you members of a community garden, or is there a community garden in Dubbo at all? Probably doesn't take much imagination to realise there would be many, many ways in which a person could contribute to that environment. And Ian was looking at the ways in which he could do that. He could share and receive produce, but also, and most importantly, he said that he would also be defined beyond that of his disability. But we can take this even further. This diagram may be difficult to read, so if I can actually take you through this, because it builds very much on John's passion about roles, but also the importance of how we can safeguard the roles that we may have in the community. So in regards to this chart, the first column you'll see is the column of passion. And what happened was we asked Ian to identify 10 different passions. Can you see how 10's coming up again? What are 10 different passions that you may have, Ian, that we may investigate and identify further? Of those 10 passions, once again, gardening was identified. So then we looked at the issue of what are the opportunities in the community where Ian's interest in gardening could be developed further. And we've given you examples of that by using the community audit tool. Ian chose that he wanted to be part of a community garden. And then, of course, there are many roles that can occur within that community garden. And one of the interesting and most powerful roles that we can say in introducing a person to the community is, I hear that you're looking for new members. Isn't that a great opening line? We hear that you're looking for new members who have a passion and a shared passion for your interest in gardening. And particularly in the area of being a financial member. And Ian was aware of that responsibility that went with being a member of the community garden. But there was a threat to that. And the threat was that he had a limited income and his capacity to pay up front the membership for the year was limited. So what happened as a result of that, discussions occurred and he was able to make periodic payments. So we need to be aware of what may and will go wrong and to have strategies in place to reduce that or stop it altogether. So in some ways, when we have the definition of community, as in Tool 4, we can actually build on that and our understanding of that. But we can also look at the issue of Tool 5. And Tool 5 is a definition of community inclusion that Inclusion Works developed in response to our understanding of asset-based community development. Now I'll just read this. When people experience positive relationships in community whereby their gifts, talents and contributions are valued, acknowledged, encouraged, supported and rewarded. I'll repeat that again. Definition of community inclusion. When people experience positive relationships in community whereby their gifts, talents, contributions are valued, acknowledged, encouraged, supported and rewarded. I also think that's a very good definition of interdependence. I know many people with disabilities in Townsville who live independent, lonely lives. They know how to cook, they know how to shop, they know how to use public transport. But there's a poverty of relationships in their life, and while there's a poverty of relationships in their life, their capacity to contribute to not just their life but others is limited. One of the things about definitions, we believe, is that it's also a powerful tool for assessment. I'm aware in my understanding of discussions with the NDIS, particularly under the ILC, people will have to provide very clear evidence, absolute evidence in regards to the achievement of the goals of the ILC. So we can use this definition in some ways to say, well, what is the evidence that you're going to have of a person experiencing a positive relationship whereby their gifts, talents and contributions are valued, acknowledged, encouraged, supported and rewarded. So our take-home message is once again to seriously invest time with others in discovering the more in people and the more in their community. Now we have just a few more minutes and what I'd like to do is to invite you to consider this question. And the question is this: perhaps as a result of this single session, what could I do today when you go home to implement some of the concepts that we've shared with you today? And here are some examples. Perhaps you can take the head, heart and hand audit and actually share that with others, as well as complete and do it with yourself or your son or your daughter, neighbours, etc. To identify 10, remember that word, that number I mean, 10 significant others that may be able to assist you in the community. Who are those 10 people? And what would it take for you to invite them to be part of your community inclusion journey? Third one, to capture key passions and call upon the community asset audit tool to maximise the diverse opportunities waiting. And finally, to identify the valued roles and safeguarding strategies within chosen priorities that you could build upon. Michael Leunig is a cartoonist in Melbourne. Michael Leunig also has had lived experience in regards to disability in the area of mental health, and is a very, very clever social commentator by way of cartoons. And this is one of the best. As you can tell, it's a fairly weathered one, but the message is very clear. Have a look at this. I've seen that. I've seen that in many human services, where what a human service says it's doing doesn't match what we see. And not just that, the person standing in the doorway I often think could be a worker who also is uncertain in regards to what his role is, in regards to creating what this particular function of amusement is supposed to produce. So if we ignore the more in people and the more in community, there is a consequence of that. I've finished within time. So thank you very much.